Welcome to the trials and tribulations of my 8-bit breadboard computer build. In my previous video, we started Kit 3 or Part 3 out of 4, and that included building the RAM and the program counter. So we finished with the RAM, and now we're going to go ahead and begin testing it out to make sure everything's working correctly. So here we're beginning the first round of testing for the RAM. I start off by just clearly showing my build and how I've designed it, with the addition of the 220 ohm resistors and insulation that I've added to the LED legs. I haven't changed anything from my previous video of the initial construction, and now we're just going to go ahead and proceed with testing it. So we start by powering up the breadboard, and then we'll just play with the RAM altogether. So let me just go ahead and connect power. So now that we have power hooked up to the breadboard, you can see that I'm getting a default of all ones. We've seen that in my previous videos when we were testing out the registers. Sometimes you get all ones or all zeros as inputs. But next we're going to go ahead and mess with those address lines that I have here in yellow. The green ones are my data lines, but the address lines are just going to switch the first wire from low or ground to high. And we're just going to do it individually for each of the 4 wires to see if we get different outputs. For the first wire, when I switch it to high, nothing happens, and then when I switch it back, still nothing happens. And now I'm doing the second wire, which you see has gone all zeros, and when I switch it back to ground, we get a weird output now. Not all the LEDs are on anymore. And then now I'm trying to do the third wire, but it is pretty much jammed into the breadboard pretty good, so I'm going to have to use my tool to wiggle it out. I would advise to try to make them a bit shorter. I just made them long because it was like, is it really connecting correctly? But for, just so that you don't have to struggle. And here you can clearly see that's the third address line hooked up to the chip there, and I'm just zooming in a bit on my output here. So I'm just going to continue to mess with the address line, switching them from ground or low to high. First I'm doing it individually, and I often repeat the process just to make sure that the output is consistent, and sometimes when you plug in from low to high, it's going to pull out the other end of the wire, which I was just checking here to make sure it's still connected to the chip. That way it's not messing out with the output either. So sometimes you can run into those little issues, either it's the rewiring or it's not in the breadboard as you thought, it's not connected to the chip pin as you might have thought. Sometimes you offset that by doing your testing, so just try to be meticulous and just remember to review everything that you're doing all at once. You might mess things up as you go, but as I mentioned, some of them get pretty jammed, so definitely use your tools to help. And once I do them individually, to make sure that the data is consistent or the output is consistent, I'm going to try to do the address lines together. So just doing 2 wires to high and the other 2 to low, or what happens when they're all high, just to see what's going on. And then we'll go ahead and mess with the green wires next, the address lines, to see what's happening there when we're trying to input some data into the RAM. Now we're going to begin the second round of testing. I'm just going to start off by showing the architecture of my breadboard once more. The top 2 chips here are our RAM chips, and then in the center we have the inverter chips, and at the end we have the bus transceiver that we've used before in my previous videos, like for the registers. This large green wire is the write enable to enable data onto the RAM, and both the RAM chips are connected to each other so they can have the same data. And once again, those yellow 4 wires are the address lines, and the 8 green are the data lines. So now we're just going to go ahead and hook up the breadboard to power. And in this round, we're going to alternate the wires from high to low. Instead of doing it one by one, we're going to try and see what does it look like when we do 2 of them on high, 2 of them on low. What happens when all of them are on high, to kind of see what's going on with the RAM here. So for the first address line, I'm going to go ahead and switch that from low to high. And let's see, there isn't a change there. Okay, and we saw that in the first test. So now what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to add the second address line to high, and now we get all zeros. So when I reset the first address line, doesn't look like anything's happening. And now I'm going to go ahead and put back the second address line to low or to ground, and as you can see, we've got a new output. We got 00110011. So we're not getting that default of all ones again. So that's interesting. So as you can see, I'm just testing the first address line and second address line. Already you can see that when the first address line is on high and the second address line is on low, we get a new output of 111000011. And when they are both on low again, we get 00110011. So that's very interesting, a bit funky. So I'm just alternating here so you can kind of see the difference. And now I'm going to try to see what happens with the third address line when we switch that from low and set that to high. It's a bit jammed in there, so just bear with me as I wiggle that out. And already we can see the output change. So now we have 00110010. So the third address line is set to high, the first address line is also on high, and the second address line is also on high. So I'm just demonstrating the changes of output real quick, and then here we're going to try with the fourth address line to see if there's anything that'll change, but nothing's happened. So, all right. That's good to know. We've seen how they work together, what happens when both of them are on high, both of them are on low, or if we alternate one from another, what happens with the RAM. And now I'm just going to go ahead and start resetting them back to ground. So now I'm just going to see if the manipulating with the data lines, if that is that going to change anything, but it doesn't, not right now. So I'm just going to go ahead and set the write enable to low to reset the RAM. So we get the default of all ones, as you can see. But when I set that back to high, we just have one LED that's still lit up for some reason. So low, we get all ones, and set my enabled to high, and we have one LED that's lighting up, displaying 00000100. So it's all interesting. You know, you just want to mess with it a little bit, play around, and record the changes. Now, when I set the first address line to high, we can see the output of 111000011. And when we set the first address line back to low, we get that one LED again. Before, we would just set 2 to high, and we would just get all zeros. But now it looks like we're getting the data that we had before, the 00110011. And then I'm messing with the third address line here, and we're getting 00110010 when we shift it from low to high, and then when it goes from high to low, we get again 00110011. Here I'm just resetting it, so the fourth address line, there's no change. So now we're going to proceed with the third round of testing. So I have added 3 green LEDs to the end of my breadboard here to test my bus transceiver chip. Now, first things first, we're going to go ahead and just hook up my breadboard to power, and I'll just proceed the same testing that I've been doing throughout the entire video, testing my data lines, testing them together, and making sure that we're getting the same output. So we're getting already the same default of all ones, which is good. Same things are happening from the data lines as we've seen. So that's very good. It's positive, it's consistent, nothing new is arising. So nothing too complex. Sometimes my power is a bit wacky if I don't get the correct, see, it's already reset because of the issue with the power, so I just have to start all over, but that's okay. That's just a part of the process. And for my build, unfortunately, as I've mentioned before, I'm abroad. I have to use the adapter that was sent with the kit along with another adapter so that it can fit into the European socket. And then now we're just going to go ahead and test and just see if we can transmit the same information from the RAM onto the bus. So we're getting the default of all ones. And now we're going to go ahead and enable information onto the bus, and it's working correctly. So we're done with the RAM so far. Now we're going to move on to the memory address register and the program counter. Thank you for watching. Until next time.